Police Scotland have confirmed that a 74-year-old man has sadly died following a collision with a bus in the Cowgate area of Edinburgh. The incident happened just after 7:30pm last night, and officers received reports of a severed head being discovered in the street just behind me here. Several streets around the area were closed and nightclubs were forced to evacuate as revellers were sent home for the night while a full-scale police investigation got underway.
A special shout out here to JAOC for resurrecting this, because this has bothered me for the past year and it continues to bother me still. Now, what this is about is an incident in Edinburgh on the 2nd of November 2024. Basically, a decapitated head was found on the Cowgate. Now, it wasn't found by the police, it wasn't found by any investigation branch, it was found by passers-by who picked it up thinking it was a Halloween costume. Now, if that doesn't sound crazy enough, this is going to blow your mind. The official report is that this head came from a body that was decapitated by a bus that went down the Cowgate. Now, that already sounds suspicious because the Cowgate is notoriously bad for traffic, so they shut it one way a long time ago. There would have been traffic restrictions there at that time, so it would have been one way only. Also, that is one of the most notoriously busy places for tourists, so there's never a time when there's not hundreds of people down there. The student halls are quite close as well, so students pass between this whole area as well. The official report is that somehow this bus drove down the Cowgate, even though it was probably closed, managed to decapitate this guy with a clean cut that his head just flew off and went down the road and nobody noticed, and the driver drove off. Now that's crazy, and I can quite unbiasedly say that's crazy because nobody would have missed that. People spot everything in this day and age. People have videos of everything. There's Ring doorbells on every door. People record things that they see out the window, and you're telling me this bus went down there, decapitated somebody, and nobody noticed, not even the bus driver. The reason this whole thing's bothering me more, if you decapitate somebody, you would hear them. You would hear them screaming. You would feel the bump under the bus. Now, I've spoken to several bus drivers to see what they thought, and all of them have said in all their years they have never heard of anything like this happening. I'm not saying it doesn't happen when people can get decapitated, but I don't think you could ever say that we've had a situation where somebody's been decapitated by a bus and the bus driver has managed to make an absolute clean getaway without even noticing. If the head was in the street when people picked it up, it means that he must have got away quite a while before this head was found. So if this was an accident like the police say, where they were well aware it was an accident, how come they weren't there to get the head off the street before somebody else found it? We're supposed to assume this bus made a clean getaway. This is the Cowgate. You're not going any faster than 1 mile an hour. So they're making out that this bus managed to get down there, decapitate the boy, get out the Cowgate, and far away before anyone found out about it. The whole thing is just crazy because if the bus company were implicated, how did the police know about that when nobody's got any footage? The next thing, if a bus driver did this, he would have colleagues that knew about this. There would be people who saw the footage from the bus. Nobody can keep a secret anymore, so if somebody at the bus company had done that, one of his colleagues would have mentioned it on Facebook. People just can't help themselves. We've had none of that. And then there's more questions like, where was the bus going to? Where was the bus coming from? If it was going somewhere, surely somebody was expecting that bus to arrive. So why was nobody asking where the bus was? Why was nobody asking where the bus had been? If an incident like that happened, they would still take that bus out of commission to figure out what happened. And if they did that, the bus company would have to say, look, we've had to take a bus out of commission because something happened in Edinburgh. And if they did that, somebody would have talked about that. The problem we've got here is that it's so easy to disprove this because in this day and age, people know when people are hanging their washing out. And people post about people hanging their washing out. So they're trying to make out that nobody actually talked about this at all. Nobody at the bus company, none of the driver's friends, not the driver, nobody in the Cowgate, nobody in Edinburgh, nothing. That doesn't sound likely. I put a freedom of information request in to name the bus company as I believe it's in the public interest, because if we have bus drivers who are decapitating people, fleeing the scene, I would say that is a public worry. Obviously the council disagreed with me. One thing I actually respect JAOC for doing, which I had not thought of, and I thought this was genius, was they insinuated it was Lothian buses. Now, by doing that, it forced a response from Lothian buses to admit that they had nothing to do with this and it was not their bus company. The reason that's so important is that Lothian buses have a monopoly pretty much in town, and it means that if they aren't involved, it means that this must have been a private coach, if the story is to be believed. Why is that important? Well, public bus companies are regulated for the most part, meaning they will have their own legal department, they will have their own liaisons with the police as well. If it's a private coach, it's more than likely unregulated, which means this should be classed as a homicide or manslaughter, dangerous driving, and a standard hit and run. The police are not doing that. The police, in fact, have a horrifying response. Again, thanks to J8OC for these responses, they're quite illuminating. The police can confirm there have been no arrests or charges made directly in relation to the collision itself. Police Scotland do not hold any information about third-party disciplinary proceedings, and Section 17 of the Act therefore applies. This implies that they have not pursued any kind of criminal damages or even tried to find out what was going on, because they've left it to a third-party disciplinary body. Who are this third-party disciplinary body? Because if it was Lothian buses, you can maybe understand. But if this is a private coach, who is disciplining them? This is a criminal matter, if we are to believe their story. I don't think that flies. I mean, if we think about this, if I had been driving a Royal Mail van and I knocked somebody down and they died, would I be going to the police or would I be going to Royal Mail's disciplinary body? And if we think about that, that is why this doesn't make any sense. The police have obviously had to admit that it was a private coach because of Lothian Buses denying its involvement. There was no correspondence with public transport operators, the Scottish Government or CEC in relation to the incident. Therefore, Section 17 of the Act applies. So that basically means that they haven't told anyone about this because it's nothing to do with them. Why is it nothing to do with them? I can't get my head around this at all. Why on earth would this be down to a third-party regulator when it is a criminal matter? To me, this is just further proof that the whole story is absolute nonsense. Now, I'll admit that I don't know enough about the human anatomy to say whether or not a bus could decapitate somebody as cleanly as this obviously did. I mean, I have seen the images of the head in the street, which I'm not sharing, but from what I can see, the head's not crushed, and it also looks like a clean cut. I don't know. To me, that seems highly unlikely that that would happen, but as I say, that's not my area of expertise, so make of that what you will. I'll be honest, the first red flag that got me in this whole thing was the fact that the media did not say the bus driver is being counselled, the bus driver is receiving counselling, the bus driver's family is being counselled. If you see any of these kind of accidents all over Scotland, all over the UK, you always see that in the media. The bus driver is being counselled. That wasn't in it this time. Why? Another interesting connection that I'm not going to focus on because it's something I can't prove and it's a stretch to make if it's not true. On the 11th of November 2009, there was a court case for a gentleman with the same name as the victim who was charged with some very, very obscene things. Now, I can't find out any information about the court case. I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know if it's definitely the same guy. I don't know what the outcome of that case is. The only reason that might be important is that if it's the same guy who was charged for this offence on the 11th of November 2009, his death would be roughly about the anniversary. Maybe that's important. Maybe it's not. I can't prove it. Thanks for listening anyway. I just had to bring this up again because it has bothered me for ages and I don't think we'll ever find out what happened. Again, a special thanks to J8OC. It was the first time I actually found out about them last night and I think what they're doing is fantastic and it got me interested in all this again. As always, if you know anything that might help us get to the truth of the matter, let us know. Till next time.